That looks Danish. Danish with shot veneer. Maybe vintage 60s. Whatever. Don't those usually have teak pulls? I'll get the car keys. And I'll grab the furniture blankets. Hey everyone, I'm Andy. Welcome to Furniture Fables. If the queen of the flip is the dresser, then maybe the cool clique of the flip is the MCM gang. With its minimalist, uncluttered, form follows function, baby attitude, mid-century modern doesn't try to be cool. It doesn't have to. It doesn't care what people think. That's why we all think it's so cool. I'm gonna end up doing this one's homework, aren't I?
Here was the picture, friends. Yes, the clearest thing in it was the dog bowl. And yet, there was something about it. And so when I got it home, I took it out and had a closer look, and I realized what I had, unless I was mistaken, a true vintage Danish 6-drawer Highboy dresser from the 60s. The veneer was in seriously terrible shape. Already it had big chunks missing, and it also had lots of other places where it was loose, but all the drawers were in great working order, which was a huge relief. Because of the state of the drawer veneer, I knew my only hope would be a design that relied on the healing power of paint. All right, shall we see if we can help our cool Scandinavian friend? My first step was to give the drawers a good inspection to find all the places the veneer was coming loose, and then, of course, to give the piece a good cleaning. I used Dawn dish soap and some elbow grease, cleaning all the drawers and inside and outside of the body of the dresser, and made sure to thoroughly rinse. This is, of course, crucial. Then I mixed up a 50-50 vinegar and water solution and gave the inside of the dresser and all the drawers a good spray. Along with a sunbath, this can do wonders for any mild to moderate old furniture odors. Okay, after she had soaked up the California sun, I brought her up onto the porch and took a look at the back. This is a good way to help get a clearer sense of how a piece is constructed. You can see that those raised trim pieces, a very Danish design element, appear to be separate from the body, and they are also solid and in great shape, which is great news. All right, time to sand. Here I am using my SurfPrep sander with a coarse grit pad. I have been sanding for years with a much more standard orbital sander, and you absolutely can do furniture work with a standard sander, but full transparency, when I decided to launch my channel, I did a little splurge and I got this sander. You can see how beneficial its rectangular shape is, as well as having these foam pad abrasives that allow you to sand over more delicate details without altering or ruining their shapes. It's a fabulous tool, and I am having a lot of fun using my SurfPrep sander. So after I did a coarse paper, I switched to a medium grit. You can see that there were black stains left in the wood. Black stains can be difficult to get out because they don't really sand out that well. In the past, I have used hydrogen peroxide, just like what you may have in your first aid kit at home, to lift them out. You need to let it soak for several hours, and you may have to do more than one treatment, so to speak. But because I had decided to paint the top, I knew that the primer would handle them just fine. So next I took out the bottom 4 drawers again and gave them a good sanding, both to prep the surface and to locate and knock off any remaining loose veneer. And then I started to sand the pulls. It almost looked like wax or some other sticky liquid had dripped onto the pulls, and they were also moderately scuffed and dinged, But when all that gunk and the old stain came off, underneath was gorgeous natural teak. Ah, teak, as tough as it is beautiful. You can, of course, stain teak, but after seeing these pulls post-sanding, I decided I would most likely leave them in their natural state. Okay, it was time for the flipper's healing salve. I gave the drawers a good wipe down with a tack cloth to remove any dust from sanding, and then I taped up the handles. I used a tongue depressor to burnish the underside. Then it was time to mix the Bondo. Bondo is a great filler to use for large, flat front drawer repairs. Not only is it tough and strong, it's relatively affordable, but as you may know from experience or from my other stories, once you mix the red hardener in, you only have a few minutes to work with the product before it hardens up. I applied it all over all of the many drawer wounds and then gave it about 30 minutes to set up. Little note here, looking back, I think it would have been much safer to either remove the veneer entirely, which is a much bigger, harder job usually, or apply the Bondo over the entire surface of the drawer fronts as an all-over smooth coat. But to the touch, this veneer was actually feeling pretty smooth, so I was fairly certain texture wouldn't be an issue. I used my orbital sander where my Bondo application was a bit thicker, and then I switched over to my SurfPrep for the rest. Yep, it was a two-sander kind of day. Note, the most important piece of equipment you will see in this story is that dust mask. Remember, no piece of furniture in the world is worth your lungs, so protect them. Here you can see that I've got some little imperfections in the filler, as well as a boo-boo I completely missed. So it ain't over yet. Since my sanders were nice and warmed up, I unscrewed the awesome legs and gave them all a good sanding as well. Look at how fabulous this SurfPrep manages these feet. Look at this teak wood. Oh, so pretty. Clearly deserving of a senior portrait / glamour shot. I like how it's leaning against the drain pipe. It's cute. After that, I noticed over on the body of the dresser, there was a thin gouge along that slender trim on one side. I got out some plastic wood in the darker color walnut and added a liberal amount over that. Still filling, I went back and using some more plastic wood, I filled that one damaged spot I had missed during the more frantic Bondo application, as well as over any of the little small imperfections in the original repairs. And then let those set up for a couple of hours. And then using a 220 grit disc over my squishy sanding sponge, I hand sanded those areas. And then I found one more spot. The good news is, and I'm sure you'll all be relieved to hear this, was that all of my filling and sanding was not disturbing the dog's naps. Phew, okay. After I had decided to leave those pulls natural, I came back in with a fine grit paper on one of the abrasive sponges and gave them a more thorough sanding using that SurfPrep again to manage all of those beautiful Danish curves. Whew, that's a lot of dust. Time to get the blower out. Okay, now I began my precision taping job. Because I was trying to protect those elevated trim pieces, I decided it would be easiest in terms of taping to prime and paint the top of the piece completely, and then come back and do the sides. Taking my time, I carefully taped off that trim, focusing on that edge where the trim and the top met, and then burnished that tape down really well. Then I got out my Dixie Belle B.O.S. primer in white and painted the top. I let the primer dry for a good 3 hours, then came back in and gave it a light sanding with my 220 disc to knock off anything rough that the primer may have brought up. Okay, it was clear that we were going to need a color cool enough to hang with this piece, so out came Damask by Fusion Mineral Paint. Damask is one of those many gorgeous neutrals that are trending and so popular right now. It has a warm undertone and in some lights reads like a true quiet mauve, while in others it reads more as a warm beige with mauve undertones. I was betting that it would support these teak pulls and trim like a superstar. I put on 2 coats and then let that top dry overnight. The next morning, I got out my Dixie Belle sanding pad and gave the top a quick wet sand, which is just what it sounds like, and is a great way to butter up your paint surface to its smoothest version. Then I added a 3rd coat to the top and peeled back that painter's tape while the paint was still wet. Ooh, I think we're on our way, folks. Now it was time to prep those sides. I did the same thing as before, going carefully and slowly, paying close attention to that trim edge and burnishing well once I had the tape in place. To help myself out, I put the feet back on the body. All right, taped and ready for primer. I gave everything one last wipe with my tack cloth and then got out my primer again. Hey Pangur Ban, what's up? I decided to use a roller even though I couldn't find my mini rolling pan, and in the spirit of reduce, reuse, recycle, I'm using an old takeout container, which is not ideal shape-wise, but it is still workable. Because I was running low on my white primer, I decided to combine what I had left over of my gray Dixie Belle primer. Gray primer is great for using under darker colors, and this custom primer blend will work perfectly under Damask. Both primers are linked below if you'd like to check them out. I rolled the primer onto the drawer fronts and then used a chip brush to get up under the lip of those long pulls. Then I hit both of the sides of the dresser. I wrapped up my roller and covered the rest of the primer with saran wrap and let all of that dry for about an hour, then came back and did a 2nd coat of primer. There was just enough. I gave that second coat a good 3 hours to dry, and then using my Zibra Chiseled Wedge brush, began painting my first coat of Damask. Here's a little tip. You can make less work for yourself later by taping off the sides of your drawers before you paint them. But if you are like me and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm sure I won't get any extra paint anywhere this time," well, then your sander is your best friend, as we will see later. I gave my first coat an hour to dry and then came back and did a second coat. While that paint was still wet, I removed the tape just as I had on the top of the piece. Like Christmas morning, friends. Oh, yeah. Okay, here's where that sander comes to my rescue, helping to clean up all the primer and paint smudges along the sides of these solid wood dovetailed drawers. For flipping purposes, as well as just for the sake of doing quality work, it is always great to take a look at your drawer sides and make sure they are looking sharp. So now it was time for our little faux trim repair. I got out my Coconix repair kit. The link is included below. And I used the colors walnut and cherry and blended a bit of them together to make a third color. I find that using 3 colors is actually great in general for faux repairs. But before I actually started painting, I decided to bring our friend inside because I actually find that I do a better job using inside light whenever I attempt these tiny faux wood repairs. Using a small artist brush and kind of doing a dotting technique, I carefully added a bit of all 3 of those colors to mimic the texture and movement of the teak wood trim. With faux painting, I've found that less is more, and it's easier than you think. Don't be intimidated. There's something about a tiny scratch like this that draws the eye and can stick out like a sore thumb. So a repair like this makes a huge difference. The inside of the drawers were pretty simple, so here I am adding a bit of peelable wallpaper. You can see my patented style of paper install. This is the wrestle it in until you are sweaty and mad and ready to spit nails technique. I am so not a paper installer, but adding paper to the inside of your drawers can help give them a more finished look and add a bit of texture, and it's easy to remove should it not be your customer's cup of tea. I'll leave the link to this paper below, but I can tell you this one was a bit thinner than some papers I've worked with. Not terrible, but just a little bit more persnickety. All right, final step. I'm using Jolie's wax in clear on both the paint and the teak trim. In typical nerdy fashion, I did some research about teak specifically, and hey, if you are a teak expert out there, please share info in the comments. Some articles say don't bother sealing it, others say absolutely seal it. Some say wax is great, still others say for the love of God, don't wax the teak. So I'm waxing the teak. I I think somehow it will be okay. I am being really careful to wipe back any excess, both on the paint as well as the wood accents. Actually, the teak looks very happy to me. It started to glow and it lost its slightly ashy hue. Honestly, if you like a more grayish undertone, you could probably leave it raw. All right. Do you remember what our peeling and stained Scandinavian queen bee looked like before? And here she is now. No frills, no stencils, no transfers, just the sweet simplicity of trademark Danish proportions and design. Her mid-century sensibility celebrates the clean, clutter-free life and seems to know an almost minimalist peace. The warm neutral of Damask is allowing those flat surfaces to quietly recede, yet still support the gorgeous special teak accents. She's just super cool.
Knowing that a restorative veneer repair was beyond my capabilities, I really hoped that my paint design approach would support the Danish balanced design of this piece. And to my eyes, I think it did. When I sat down to do the pricing, I started with my out-of-pocket costs. They were right at about $40. And with all of that filling and sanding and filling and sanding, etc., the piece took about 8 hours to complete. If I pay myself $50 an hour, I could list the piece for $440. But this piece is kind of special. It's a very popular, highly desirable style of furniture who, if it were in original good condition, could possibly go for as much as $1,100 to $1,300. So after a little bit more research, I settled on a price of $635, which will give me a profit of $595. So who's the cool kid now? Right? Am I right? Can I get a yeah? Right? If you enjoyed today's story, please hit that subscribe button, like, comment. I love hearing from you. And if you should ever cross paths with one of these, I hope you feel encouraged to rescue and refresh one of these 20th century cool kids, because it really is cool to care. Thank you so much for joining me, my friends. I'll see you next time for more Furniture Fables.